Hey everybody, today I'm going to be showing you how to identify SMTs in the market the absolutely easiest way possible. A lot of you guys understand that SMT is a divergence. You understand that it's when one asset puts in a higher high or a lower high. I'm still going to be talking about that in the video, but you're having trouble visualizing it and actually finding this live on the charts. So I'm going to be giving you the easiest way to find them, and I'm going to be talking about how to implement them into a actual trading system as well. So this was pretty much the most commonly asked question on my TikTok, on my Discord, all that stuff. So if you guys want to join the Discord, you can join for free in the free community with the link in bio. You can see obviously I'm active there if I'm making videos to try and help out people with, the most common issues that they're having. All right. So, let's hop into this. Like I mentioned before, you understand that SMT is diverging market structure, meaning that when one of your two correlating asset pairs puts in a higher high and the other one puts in a lower high, it's showing divergence because correlating means they're supposed to be following the same market structure. So, what does this show when they're not? Well, it shows that the asset that puts in the higher high is the stronger pair, and the asset that puts in the lower high is the weaker pair. So, what does that actually mean for our trading? Well, first of all, I want to start off by saying that your SMT is a confirmation tool. You shouldn't be using this for any criteria to strictly enter off of. You shouldn't say, I see an SMT here, I'm going to take an inversion gap, or I'm going to do this. No. You want to pair your SMTs with areas such as liquidity or key levels, which I consider, liquidity or fair value gaps, which I consider to be key levels. So, for instance, in this pair, what you see is that you see an area of liquidity being swept out and that your other asset pair is already selling off. So, what you can take away from this is that this is probably a high likelihood area for a manipulation, and that we're in a manipulation area, we're faking out the market, thinking we're going to break higher to sell lower because the correlating asset pair is already beginning to sell off. Okay, so that's what SMT is going to tell you, is that this pair is already ready to sell off. We've manipulated here, and we might be ready to follow our other pair, right? Because it's a correlating pair. So that's how you can use SMT in the market. Now, how do we, or actually, let's take a step back. What pairs can you find SMT on? Here's the three I most frequently trade. Sorry, I can't list out literally every currency pair. I'm a futures trader. But if you want to Google what a correlating asset pair is to whatever you want to trade, Google will help you out there. But some common ones are EU and GU, gold and silver, or GC and SI, and QES, NASDAQ, and the S&P. So that's how you're identifying your correlating asset pairs to look for the higher highs and the lower highs, or the diverging market structure. So let's go and take a look at this on the live charts, right? Again, key level plus SMT, as I mentioned earlier, to identify your manipulation. I cover that a lot more in depth in a different video. This video isn't really meant to cover that. It's just meant to be a really easy way to help you identify your SMTs. Okay, so I personally always start out by identifying my SMTs on the high time frame. Ooh, sorry, we got zoomed out here. All right, here we go. So let's replay this. Right, we have our key level and SMT. Now I'm able to eye these out really quickly and really simply because I just have an eye for it. I've been trading for over 3 years, right? That's pretty easy for me. What about for you guys who already understand what SMT is, but you can't just grasp this immediately? And first of all, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have to draw up the correlating asset pair, right? So let's make this NQ and ES. Again, that's our pair, NQ and ES. They're supposed to have correlating market structure. So how can we identify an SMT if we don't really already have an eye for it and we still need help? The easiest way that I like to do this is I like to take 1 point on a candle, whether it be a swing high or whatever it is, and you can use this at any high on your high time frame, and you draw a horizontal line. And you do the same from your correlating asset pair. You draw out a horizontal line from the same candle. And you can do this with this chart layout, which I'm going to show you how to use earlier, is that your horizontal line, this little dotted line, or sorry, your vertical line, not your horizontal line, should align with the same candle, and it should be from the same time. So this is the 3 p.m. hourly candle on ES, and this is the 3 p.m. hourly candle on NASDAQ. If we draw a horizontal line, what you're going to notice is that we tap into another candlestick over here on NQ, whereas we don't tap into another candlestick on ES. So that's how you identify your SMT, right? Because price put in a higher high over here, whereas it didn't put in a higher high on ES. So what you simply do is you just connect wick to wick from again, the same candle. This is the 3 p.m. candle, and this is the candle that gets hit. So that's how you draw your SMT. Okay, so we have our SMT here, and we have our SMT here. And the other thing you should notice is that if you're drawing this out, your SMT is not correct unless one is facing higher and the other is facing lower, or vice versa, right? They need to be facing opposite directions in which way that the line is pointing, or else there's no divergence, right? Because then they would be the same. They wouldn't be having diverging market structure, okay? So how do I set up my chart like this? Let's start over. I go to this little plus button by your ticker symbol. You could click add symbol, and what you want to do is you want to go to your correlating asset pair. In this case, I'm trading ES, so I click add new pane. And what this is going to do is it's not going to look like this initially for you. It's going to look like a line. So you're going to double click on this on your candlesticks, or it's not going to be candlesticks, it's going to be a line for you. And you're going to, again, you can change your symbol or your input to the correlating asset pair. And then you change your style from line. This is what it's going to look like for you when you do this initially. And then you can turn it to candle. And that's how you're going to have this structure, right? So that's how you can see the horizontal or the vertical lines overlapping. Makes it a lot easier, right? So that's that. And that's how you identify your SMT. So let's do a couple more examples, because sometimes they're not always at swing highs. You know what I mean? This is just a swing high example. You can do this from candle to candle, right? So when you're really starting out learning and you're still trying to get an eye for SMT, you should go candle by candle and try and identify an SMT. So let's start at this candle. I'm drawing out a horizontal line, and I'm clicking the same candle. Again, this is the 8 p.m. candle on NQ and ES, and I draw out a horizontal line from the wick. Well, here, if we connect wick to wick, that's not a divergence, right? Because they both make lower lows. So there's no SMT here, right? And as you can see, they both point lower. There's no divergence as compared to this one. This one's going lower, this one's going higher, right? This one puts in a higher high, this one puts in a lower high. That's your SMT. Let's look. Again, you can just go candle by candle. What happens if I draw a horizontal line from this next one, from this next one? They both get hit, right? So if I draw wick to wick, no SMT. And what happens if you draw a candle line and it doesn't tap into a candle? Well, there's simply no SMT there again, right? So as you can see, you can just go candle by candle trying to identify what's an SMT. And if we start out on this one, actually, you'll see, if we do this one, if I draw out a horizontal line, and I draw out a horizontal line here, we have an SMT. Why is that? We go wick to wick, and they are diverting. They have diverging market structures. We put in a higher high on NQ, and we put in a lower high on ES. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because we went beneath our previous candle, we went higher. So that's how you identify your SMT, right? So that's going to wrap that up for how to identify SMTs. It's a pretty simple concept, but a lot of people have trouble identifying them. So this horizontal technique I use, where you just draw out a horizontal line from whichever candle you're looking at, should be very helpful as a beginner trying to identify your SMTs. If you want to know more about how I implement my key levels and my SMTs into my 3-step distribution model, I go super in-depth into my other YouTube videos. I literally show you how to identify manipulations, how to actually apply SMTs on the chart. This video is just meant to be an introductory video on how to identify them. But if you already know how, or you're learning in this video and you want to know how to use it in a system, I'd highly recommend going and checking out the other YouTube content from me, because it shows you, again, your SMT isn't just a tool you can immediately identify and then take a trade from. What you want to do is that you want to identify it and pair it with a confluence. So if we look at this trade, I actually have a key level. We swept out our high time frame area of liquidity, like so, and we've identified our manipulation. And then after your manipulation comes your distribution, right? So we identified our key level SMT, and as I mentioned before, up here, this is just a great way to tell when your markets aren't aligning and when one pair is ready to distribute and the other one isn't. Again, manipulation, and you can see we sell off from this level, targeting these internal levels of liquidity. So if you want to know more in depth how to actually catch trades and how to actually enter from your key level and your SMTs, like I said, highly recommend checking out my other content that goes much more in depth into all that stuff. But that's going to wrap up this video on how to identify SMT, why it's important in your trading, and how you can potentially implement it on the charts. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.